Good evening, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'll be doing a live covering the Irish Civil War. This live is for educational purposes, and I want to just be able to take you through and touch on a few aspects before it as well, just so you can get an understanding of when I'm going into the timelines. So, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to play a short clip just to allow everyone to come into the chat and get settled, and then I can start the live. So, everyone, here we go.
So be young, might see the morn. Our prison ship lies waiting in the bay. Low lie the fields of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing. We had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely around the fields of Athenry. By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young man calling.
Hello there. Thank you for coming. Roscoe One. Thank you. Good to see you. Primo, good to see you as well. And Edwin, thank you. Jamie, how'd you come along? Thank you. Hello there, Marta. Here. PK, man. Great to see you.
Raise our
Yes.
child
Oh, Frank.
with dignity.
Man, good to see you. Chris Trott, good to see you. Tommy Stiggs, man, good man. Good to see you.
Where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. So, really, what I'm going to start with now, I just want to give the backdrop into basically how it led up to the Civil War. Okay. So, I'm going to start by touching on a few topics first. Okay. And what this will then lead up to the Irish Civil War. So, first off, the backdrop. Okay. So that before the Irish Civil War happened between 1922 and 1923, there was a lot of troubles leading up to it, with mainly due to England. The United Kingdom's occupation. So, what I'm going to start with there was the Irish War of Independence. Okay, and that was from 1919 to 1921. Okay, this conflict, it pitted the Irish Nationals, which was the Republicans, who were pursuing independence from the United Kingdom, for Ireland, and it was against the British security forces and Irish loyalists, which is the Unionists. So they sought to preserve Ireland's union with Great Britain. Then the war concluded with the Anglo-Irish Treaty, and that was on December the 6th in 1921. Now, this established 26 counties in the south of Ireland as the Irish Free State, which we know as the Republic of Ireland. So, with dominion status within the British Empire, while granting home rule to 6 predominantly Protestant counties in the north, which is what we know as Northern Ireland. So, religion plays a big part here. It's, as you say, in those 6 counties, it's dominated by the Protestant, whereas, as we know, Ireland is, a Roman Catholic country. Okay, so, but then obviously, with that, a lot of dissension among the nationalists, it grew over the agreement, and which resulted in the Irish Civil War in 1922. So that's from the year 1922 to 1923. So what there was the pursuit of home rule, and that was the pursuit of the autonomy for Ireland within the United Kingdom. And this escalated in the final decades of the 19th century. So after the Home Rule Bills of 1886 and 1893 were rejected by Parliament, a third such bill was enacted in September 1914. Though it failed to satisfy many Unionists and Nationalists, nevertheless, Unionists had reformed a parliamentary army, the Ulster Volunteer Force, so the UVF, the Protestants. So they were formed to try and block a home rule, while Nationalists created their own militia, which was the Irish Volunteers as a counterforce. Now, the mounting pressure was reduced when attention shifted to support for the British war effort of the outbreak of World War I. Now, moreover, because of the onset of the war, the Home Rule Act, formerly the Government of Ireland Act in 1914, was immediately suspended for 12 months because of the subsequent developments. Its implementation would later be postponed and ultimately would never occur. Okay, so before I go into the Easter Rising, I'm just going to take this opportunity just to check the chat. Okay, everyone's still there. Hope you're all enjoying this. Right, excellent. So I'm going to now touch on the Easter Rising. I know I've got some of my United Kingdom people, Paul, and that they obviously understand the history a bit better, and I know that as well. With over in the United States, you've got quite a big Irish community, so they will be able to obviously understand or comprehend what I'm talking about. So you have the Easter Rising. So as of World War I dragged on, support increased for an extreme nationalist faction of the Irish Volunteers that opposed involvement in the British war effort. The Irish Republican Brotherhood, the IRB, a revolutionary society that had held sway over this faction, had been planning an insurrection against the British rule since 1914. And on Easter Monday, April the 24th, 1916, a revolt led by the IRB broke out in Dublin, involving about 1,000 men and women. So there was a bit of chaos on the street there. So a provisional Irish Republic government was proclaimed, and the Dublin General Post Office and other strategic points in Dublin city centre were seized. Now, after about a week of street fighting, the rebellion was squelched, and Tom Clark and Patrick Pearse and other Republican leaders were forced to surrender. Now, their executions, they were made martyrs out of them, and this sparked an explosion of anti-British outrage across the country, which only increased when it appeared that conscription might be introduced in Ireland. So now I'm going to touch on this some of the main characters within the storyline. So I'm now going to share my screen. Okay, just bear with me. Okay, right. Here we go. Sharing. Okay. So as you can see here, this gentleman, Mr. Eamon de Valera. Okay. Now, Eamon. Okay. So Eamon de Valera was an American-born Irish statesman and political leader, and he served several terms as head of government and head of state, and had a leading role in introducing the 1937 Constitution of Ireland. De Valera, was a commandant of the Irish Volunteers and Boland's Mill during the 1916 Easter Rising. He was arrested and sentenced to death, but released for a variety of reasons, including his American citizenship. and the public response to the British execution of rising leaders. He returned to Ireland after being jailed in England and became one of the leading political figures of the War of Independence. Now, after the signing of the Anglo-Irish Treaty, de Valera served as the political leader of the anti-treaty, the Sinn Féin, until 1926, when he, along with many supporters, left the party to set up Fianna Fáil, a new political party which abandoned the policy of abstentionism from Dáil Éireann. Okay, forgive my pronunciations. Okay, so from there, de Valera went on to the forefront of Irish politics until the turn of the 1960s. He took over as president of the Executive Council, and he later became the Taoiseach with the adoption of the Constitution of Ireland in 1937, and he served as Taoiseach on 3 different occasions, from 1937 to 1948, and from 1951 to 1954. And then from 57 to 59, he remained the longest servant in Taoiseach by the total days served in this post. Okay, so that's a bit of background there on Eamon. And I gonna go start touching on a few other characters, but I'm going to continue with the story. Okay, right. So the Anglo-Irish Treaty. So in October 1921, Collins and Arthur Griffith were sent to London by de Valera to conduct negotiations. The resulting Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed on December 6, 1921. And that was by Collins as well as Griffith, who believed it was one of the best that could be obtained for Ireland at the time. And the settlement established 2 new political entities: the Irish Free State, which comprised of, as I say, 26 countries, and was granted dominion status within the British Empire. Okay. And this required an oath of allegiance to the British Crown that Collins knew would be acceptable to Valera and other Republican leaders, and Northern Ireland made up 6 counties that were sometimes called the province of Ulster. Now, the path to the Irish Civil War. Now, Collins' persuasiveness helped win the acceptance for the treaty by a small majority in Dáil. But the terms of the treaty, which proved acceptable to a substantial number of Sinn Féin members, and split the party into 2 factions. Okay, hold on. Okay. So the former group became the core of the official Irish Free State Army, and the latter group, known as the Irregulars, began to organise armed resistance against the new independent government. The 2 sides fought against each other ensuing Irish Civil War from 1922 to 1923, which ended in the defeat of the anti-treaty forces. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So this is important because basically this will give you an idea of Ireland and what at the time when the battles were happening, and the difference of the 2 factions and the paths that they were taking. Okay. Present, share screen, window. Okay, right. I hope you can all see that. I'm just going to Right. Okay. Now we're on with the Irish Civil War. So the Irish Civil War. This was from the 28th of June 1922 to the 24th of May 1923, and was a conflict that accompanied the establishment of the Irish Free State as an entity independent from the United Kingdom within the British Empire. The conflict was waged between two opposing groups of Irish nationalists, the forces of the new Free State, who supported the Anglo-Irish Treaty, under which the state was established, and the Republic opposition, from whom the treaty represented a betrayal of the Irish Republic. The war was won by the Free State forces. Okay, I'm just going to pause there. I just want to take my time just to have a look at the chat. Okay. Sort of make sure everyone is up. Okay, just want to see if anyone has any questions at all. Team Do, thank you for turning up. Brilliant. Good to see you. Excellent. Okay, the Civil War may have claimed more lives than the War of Independence against Britain that preceded it, and left Irish society divided and embittered for decades afterwards. To this day, the two main political parties in the Republic of Ireland, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, are the direct descendants of the opposing sides in the war. Now, the treaty. Now, the Anglo-Irish Treaty arose from the Irish War of Independence fought between Irish separatists, organised as the Irish Republic, and the British government from 1919 to 1921. Now, the treaty provided for self-governing Irish state in the 26 of Ireland's 32 counties, having its own army and police. However, rather than creating the independent republic favoured by most nationalists, the Irish Free State would be an autonomous dominion of the British Empire and the British monarch as head of state, in the same manner as Canada and Australia. The treaty also stipulated that members of the new Irish Parliament would have to take the following oath of allegiance. So I'm going to read the statement of the oath of allegiance. So, I do solemnly swear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the Irish Free State as by law established, and that I will be faithful to His Majesty King George V, his heirs and successor by law in virtue of the common citizenship of Ireland and Great Britain, and here adherence and membership of the group of nations forming the British Commonwealth of Nations. Now, this oath was considered highly objectionable by many Irish Republicans. Furthermore, under the treaty, the state was not to be called a republic, but a free state, and it would be limited to 26 southern and western counties of Ireland. Now, the remaining 6 northeastern counties, with their Protestant majority, would opt to remain part of the United Kingdom as Northern Ireland. Now, the partition of Ireland had already been decided by the Westminster Parliament in the Government of Ireland Act 1920 and was confirmed in the Anglo-Irish Treaty. Also, several strategic ports were to remain occupied by the Royal Navy. Nonetheless, Michael Collins, the Republic leader who had led the Irish negotiation team, argued that the treaty gave not the ultimate freedom all the nations aspire and develop, but the freedom to achieve freedom. However, anti-treaty militants in 1922 believed that the treaty would never deliver the full Irish independence. So there was a lot of scepticism around the treaty, and so this sort of formed the split in the nationalist movement. Now, the split over the the split over the treaty was deeply personal. Many of the leaders on both sides had been close friends and comrades during the War of the Independence. This made their lethal disagreement over the treaty all that more bitter. Now, Michael Collins, who I will touch on later, said that Eamon de Valera sent him as a plenipotentiary to negotiate negotiate the treaty because he knew that the British independence would not concede in independent Irish Republic, and wanted Collins to take the blame for the compromise settlement. Now, he said he was deeply betrayed when de Valera refused to stand by the agreement, and that the plenipotentiaries had negotiated with David Lloyd George and Winston Churchill, the great Winston Churchill. Now, de Valera, for his part, was furious that Collins and Arthur Griffith had signed the treaty without consulting him or the Irish cabinet as instructed. Now, Dáil Éireann, that is the Parliament of the Irish Republic, narrowly passed the Anglo-Irish Treaty by 64 votes to 57 on the 7th of January 1922. Now, following the treaty's ratification, a provisional government headed by Michael Collins and Arthur Griffith was set up to transfer the power from the British administration to the Irish Free State. Now, upon the treaty's ratification, Eamon de Valera resigned as President of the Republic and failed to be re-elected by an even closer vote of 60 to 58. And he changed the right of the Dáil to approve the treaty, saying its members were breaking their oath to the Irish Republic. Now, de Valera continued to promote a compromise whereby the new Irish Free State would be in external association with the British Commonwealth rather than be a member of it. In early March, he formed the Cumann na Poblacht Charter, excuse my pronunciation, which is in Gaelic, it should be, Republican Association Party, while remaining a member of Sinn Féin on a speaking tour of the more Republican province of Munster, starting on the 17th of March 1922. De Valera made controversial speeches at Carrick-on-Suir and Lismore, Dungarvan and Waterford. Now, his words were, if the treaty were accepted, the fight for freedom would still go on, and the Irish people, instead of fighting foreign soldiers, will have to fight the Irish soldiers of an Irish government set up by Irishmen. And Thurles, several days later, repeated the imagery and added that the IRA would have to wade through the blood of the soldiers of the Irish government, and perhaps, though, that some of the members of the Irish government to get their freedom. Now, in the letter of the Irish Independent on the 23rd of March, de Valera accepted the accuracy of their report of his comment about wading through blood and deplored that the newspaper had published it. But more seriously, the majority of the Irish Republican Army, the IRA officers, were also against the treaty, and in March 1922, their ad hoc army convention reputed the authority of the Dáil and accepted the treaty. Now, the anti-treaty IRA had formed their own army executive, which they declared to be the real government of the country. So, despite the result of the 1921 election, on the 26th of April, the Minister of Defence, Richard Mulcahy, summarised alleged illegal activities by many IRA men over the previous 3 months, which he described as seceding volunteers, including hundreds of robberies. Yet this fragmented army was the only police force on the ground following the disintegration of the Irish Republican Police and the disbanding of the Royal Irish Constabulary. Okay, so by putting 10 questions to General McCurry on the 28th of April, Sean McKenty argued that the Army Executive had acted continuously on its own to create a republic since 1917. Now, had an unaltered constitution had fallen under the control of the Dáil, and that the only body competent to dissolve the volunteer executive was a duly convened convention of the Irish Republican Army, not the Dáil. And by accepting the treaty in January and abandoning the Republic, the Dáil majority had effectively deserted the army executive. Then, in a debate on defence, McKinsey suggested that supporting the army executive, even if it meant scrapping the treaty and the terrible and immediate war with England, would be better than the civil war which are beginning to present apparently. So McKinsey supporters added that many robberies complained of by Macquarie on the 26th of April were caused by the lack of payment and provision by the Dáil and the volunteers. Okay, so as you can see, there's friction that was building. No one's trusting everyone, each other, and there's corruption. So before I go into the next part, the descent of war, I just want to quickly check the chat. Okay. Hello there, Paul. Yeah. Okay. If there's any questions, like I say, I will be doing some Q&A at the end. I just wanted to see if I can get the information to you. But please feel free to obviously ask any questions at the end, and we can go over the topic. So as I mentioned now, it's descending into war. And in the months leading up to the outbreak of civil war, there are a number of armed confrontations between the opposing IRA factions. Now, in March, there was a major standoff between up to 700 armed pro and anti-treaty fighters in Limerick over who could not occupy the military barracks being vacated by the departing British troops. Now, the situation was temporarily resolved in April when, after the arbitration, the two sides agreed to occupy the two barracks each. In April, a pro-treaty general, Adamson, was shot dead by the anti-treaties in Athlone. So in early May, there was even a more serious clash in Kilkenny when anti-treaty forces occupied the town, the centre of the town, and 200 pro-treaty troops were sent to Dublin. Okay, so I just want to take have a little look here. There's Kilkenny at the top of the map. I hope you can see my cursor. Okay, see Dublin's just slightly off the map over to here. So we're getting an idea. If you'll be able to focus when I'm just talking, you can see that the areas and towns are all marked up. Okay. So right. Okay. So there was a delay now until the June election. So basically, Collins established an army reunification committee to reunite the IRA and organise an election pact with de Valera's anti-treaty political followers to campaign jointly in the Free States' first election in 1922. And from a coalition government afterwards, he also tried to reach a compromise with the anti-treaty IRA leaders by agreeing a Republican-type constitution, basically which with no mention of any British monarch for the new state. So the IRA leaders, such as Liam Lynch, who I will touch on a little bit later on, were prepared to accept this compromise. However, the proposal for a republic constitution was vetoed by the British, and as being contrary to the terms of the treaty, they threatened military intervention in the Free State unless the treaty was fully implemented. Well, Michael Collins reluctantly agreed. This completely undermined the electoral pact between the pro and anti-treaty factions, who went into the Irish general election on the 18th of June in 1922 as hostile parties, both calling themselves Sinn Féin. Okay, so I'm sure that you may have heard of Sinn Féin. They are generally the ruling party in Northern Ireland now, but they are the Catholic Party. So the pro-treaty Sinn Féin, they won the election with 239,193 votes to 133,864 votes. Now for the anti-treaty Sinn Féin. Now, a further 247,000 people voted for other parties, most of whom have supported the treaty. Now, the elections showed that a majority of the Irish electorate supported the treaty and the foundation of the Irish Free State, and that Sinn Féin party did not represent the opinions of everyone in the new state. So you see the friction there. Obviously, Sinn Féin, they're desperate to get the breakaway. But the people are happy to have the state, but they want Ireland to be under the Commonwealth. Okay. So De Valera, his political followers, and most of the IRA continue to oppose the treaty. De Valera is quoted as saying, "The majority have no right to do wrong." Okay. So meanwhile, under the leadership of Michael Collins and Arthur Griffith, the pro-treaty provisional government set about establishing the Irish Free State and organised the National Army to replace the IRA and a new police force. However, since it was envisaged that the new army would be built around the IRA, anti-treaty IRA units were allowed to take over the British barracks and take their arms. Now, in practice, this meant by the summer of 1922, the provisional government of the Free State, controlled only by Dublin and some other areas like Longford, where the IRA units supported the treaty, fighting would ultimately break out with the provisional government tried to assert its authority over well-armed and intransigent anti-IRA units around the country, particularly a hardline group in Dublin. Now, next is the Dublin fighting. So the fighting started breaking out in the capital of the Republic of Ireland. Now, the four courts along the River Liffey quayside, the building was occupied by anti-treaty forces during the Civil War, whom the National Army subsequently bombarded into surrender. Now, the Irish National Archives in the building were destroyed subsequent to a fire, but the building was badly damaged but was fully restored after the war. Now, on April the 14th, 1922, 200 anti-treaty IRA militants, led by Rory O'Connor, occupied the four courts and several other buildings in central Dublin, resulting in a tense standoff. Now, these anti-treaty Republicans wanted to spark a new armed confrontation with the British, which they hoped would unite the two factions of the IRA against their common enemy. However, for those who were determined to make a free state into a viable, self-governing Irish state, this was an act of rebellion that would have to be put down by them, rather than the British. Arthur Griffith was in favour of using force against these men immediately. Michael Collins, who wanted to obviously avoid war at all costs, left the four-court garrison alone until late June 1922, but by this time the pro-treaty Sinn Féin party had secured a large majority in the general election. Along with other parties that supported the treaty, Collins was also coming under continuing pressure from London to assert his government's authority in his capital. Now, the British, they'd lost patience, they'd had enough now, and as a result of the actions secretly ordered by Collins, he had Henry Hughes Wilson, a retired British Army Field Marshal, assassinated in London on the 22nd of June because of his role in Northern Ireland. Winston Churchill assumed that the anti-treaty IRA were responsible for the killing, and warned Collins that he would use his British troops to attack the forecourts unless the Free State took action. In fact, the British cabinet actually resolved the attack on the forecourts themselves on the 25th of June. And in an operation that would have involved tanks, Hotwires and aeroplanes. However, on the advice of General Neville Macready, who commanded the British garrison in Dublin, the plan was cancelled at the last minute. Now, Macready's argument was that the British involvement would have united the Irish nationalist opinion against the treaty, and instead Collins was given a last chance to clear the forecourts himself. Now, the final straw on the Free State government came on the 27th of June, where the forecourts Republic garrison kidnapped Ginger O'Connell, who was a general in the National Army. Now, Collins, after giving the forecourts garrison a final ultimatum to leave the building, decided to end the standoff by bombarding the forecourts garrison into surrender. The government that appointed Collins as a commander-in-chief of the National Army, this attack was not the opening shots of the war, as skirmishes had taken place between pro and anti-treaty IRA factions throughout the country when the British were handing over the barracks. However, this represented the point of no return. When all-out war was ipso facto declared and the Civil War officially began. Now, Collins had accepted a British offer of the artillery for use by the new army of the Free State, though General Macready gave just 200 shells of the 10,000 he had in store in Kilmainham barracks. Now, the anti-treaty forces in the forecourts, who possessed only small arms, surrendered after 2 days of bombardment and the storming of the building by the Free State troops. Shortly before the surrender of the forecourts, a massive explosion destroyed the wing of the complex, including the Irish Public Record Office, injuring many advancing Free State soldiers and destroying records of several centuries of the government in Ireland. It was alleged to the government supporters that the building had been deliberately mined. Historians dispute whether the Pro was intentionally destroyed by mines laid by the Republicans on the evacuation, or if the explosions occurred when their ammunition store was accidentally ignited by the bombardment. Pitched battles continued between Dublin until the 5th of July, as anti-treaty IRA units from the Dublin Brigade, led by Oscar Traynor, occupied O'Connell Street, provoking a week's war street fighting. The fighting cost both sides 65 killed and 280 wounded, and among the dead was the Republican leader, Cathal Brugha, who made his last stand after exiting the Granville Hotel. And in addition, the Free State took over 500 Republic prisoners. The civilian casualties are estimated to have been numbered well over 250. So when the fighting died down in Dublin, the Free State government was finally left firmly in control of the Irish capital, and the anti-treaty forces dispersed the country, mainly to the south and the west. Okay, so I'm going to pause there now. So we kind of get into right to the outbreak. It's all happening in the capital in Ireland. Okay, so I'm just going to take this chance just to check the chat. Okay. Right. Check the chat. Okay. Excellent. Right. So now I'm going to talk about the opposing forces. So the outbreak of the Civil War forced the pro and anti-treaty supporters to choose sides. Supporters of the treaty came to be known as the pro-treaty or the Free Army, or the Free State Army, legally the National Army, and were often called staters by their opponents. The latter called themselves the Republicans and were also known as anti-treaty forces or irregulars, a term preferred by the Free State side. Now, the anti-treaty IRA claimed it was defending the Irish Republic that had been declared in 1916 during the Easter Rising, that had been confirmed by the First Oil, and had been invalidly set aside by those who accepted the Compromise of the Free State. Now, Eamon de Valera stated that he would serve as an ordinary IRA volunteer and left the leadership of the anti-treaty Republicans to the military leaders such as Liam Lynch, the IRA Chief of Staff. Now, the Civil War split the IRA, and when the Civil War broke out, the anti-treaty IRA outnumbered the pro-Free State forces by roughly 15,000 men to 7,000, so over 2 to 1. Okay, so the paper strength of the IRA in early 1922 was over 72,000 men. But most of them were recruited during the truce with the British and fought in neither War of the Independence nor the Civil War. However, the anti-treaty IRA lacked an effective command structure, a clear strategy of sufficient arms. They started the war with only 6,780 rifles and a handful of machine guns, and many of their fighters were armed only with shotguns. Now, they also took a handful of armoured cars from the British troops as they were evacuating the country. More importantly still, they had no artillery of any kind, and as a result, they were forced to adopt a defensive stance throughout the war. Now, by contrast, the Free State government managed to expand its forces dramatically after the state of the war. Michael Collins and his commanders were able to build up an army which was able to overwhelm their opponents in the field. British supplies of artillery, aircraft, armoured cars and machine guns, small arms and ammunition were much help to the pro-treaty forces. So you can see there the British were arming the pro-treaty forces, and the National Army amounted to 14,000 men by August 1922 and was 38,000 strong by the end of 1922, by the end of the war. It had swollen to 55,000 men and 3,500 officers, far in excess of what the Irish state would need to maintain in peacetime. Collins, most ruthless officers and men were recruited from the Dublin Active Secret Service, the elite unit of the IRA's Dublin Brigade, which Collins had commanded in the Irish War of Independence, in particular from his assassination unit squad. Now, the squad in the new National Army, they were known as the Dublin Guard. Towards the end of the war, they were implicated in some serious atrocities against anti-treaty guerrillas. Most of the National Army's officers were pro-treaty IRA men and were a substantial number of their soldiers. However, many of the new Army's other recruits were unemployed veterans of the First World War, where they had served in the Irish Division of the British Army. Former British Army officers were also recruited for their technical expertise, and a number of the senior Free State commanders, such as Emmett Dalton John, T. Prout and W.R.E. Murphy, had seen service as officers in World War I. So Dalton and Murphy in the British Army and Prout in the US Army, the Republicans had made much use of this fact and in their propaganda, claiming that the Free State was only a proxy force for Britain itself. However, in fact, the majority of the Free State soldiers were raw recruits without military experience in either the First World War or the subsequent Irish War of Independence. Okay. Now, I'm going to go obviously talk about now the Free State. They end up taking the major towns. So with Dublin in pro-treaty hands, the conflict spread throughout the country and the war started with the anti-treaty forces holding Cork. Okay, so you can see Cork down here. Okay. Holding Cork. They also held Limerick and Waterford as part of a self-styled independent Munster Republic. However, since the anti-treaty side were not equipped to wage conventional war, Liam Lynch was unable to take advantage of the Republicans' initial advantage in numbers and territory held. He hoped simply to hold the Munster Republic long enough to force Britain to renegotiate the treaty. Now, the large towns in Ireland were all relatively easy taken by the Free State in August 1922. Michael Collins, Richard Mulcahy and Ian Duffy planned a nationwide Free State offensive dispatching columns overland to take Limerick in the west and Waterford in the southeast. So if you can see there, we've got Limerick and Waterford. So you've got Limerick up here, and we've got Waterford, okay, here. Okay. And seaborne forces to take counties Cork and Kerry in the south and Mayo in the west. Okay. So we've got there, and we've got Mayo there as well over in the west up here. Okay. So in south, landings occurred in the Union Hall in County Cork and Fenagh, the port of Tralee. In County Kerry, Limerick fell on the 20th of July. Now, Waterford on the same day and Cork City on the 10th of August after a Free State force landed by a sea passage west. Okay, so we was there. We've got Union Hall. Down here, you can see where they've landed, the Free State. The red one, sorry. Okay. Now, another seaborne expedition in Mayo in the west secured government control over part of the country, while in some places the Republicans had put up undetermined resistance. Now, they were able to defeat the regular forces armed with artillery and armour, and the only real convention battle during the Free State offensive, which was the Battle of Kilmallock, was fought when Free State troops advanced south from Limerick. Okay. So now what we're going to next talk about is the guerrilla war, the guerrilla warfare. Now, government victories in the major towns inaugurated a period of guerrilla warfare after the fall of Cork. Liam Lynch ordered the anti-treaty IRA units to disperse from the flying columns as they had when fighting the British. Now, they held out in areas such as western parts of County Cork and Kerry in the south, County Wexford, okay, and in the east, counties Sligo, Mayo in the west, and sporadic fighting also took place around Dundalk, where Frank Aiken and the 4th Northern Division of the Irish Republican Army were based, and Dublin, where small-scale but regular attacks were mounted on Free State troops. Okay, just bear with me. I'm just going to get that back. Okay, let's share the screen again. Share. Right. Okay, so we're going through now, August and September 1924. Okay, so in October 1922, Eamon de Valera and the anti-treaty, the Teacher Dala, the TD's members of Parliament, set up their own republic government in opposition to the Free State. However, by then the anti-treaty side held no significant territory, and de Valera's government had no authority over the population. In any case, the IRA leaders paid no attention to it, seeing the Republican authority as vested in their own military leaders. Now, in the autumn and winter of 1922, the Free State forces broke up many of the larger guerrilla units in late September. For example, a sweep of northern County Sligo by Free State troops under Sean McKeon successfully cornered the anti-treaty column, which had been operating in the north of the county. 6 of the column were killed by 30 captured, and 30 were captured along with armoured car. Now, a similar sweep in Connemara in County Mayo in late November captured anti-treaty column commander Michael Kilroy and many of his fighters. So December saw the capture of 2 separate Republican columns in Meath and Kildare area, and intelligence gathered by the Free States also led to the capture on the 5th of August of over 100 Republican fighters in Dublin. Now, they were attempting to destroy bridges leading into the city on the 4th of November, and Ernie O'Malley, commander of the anti-treaty forces in Dublin, was captured when the National Army troops discovered his safe house. Now, elsewhere, anti-treaty units were forced by the lack of supplies and the safe house to disperse into smaller groups, typically of 9 to 10 men. Now, an exception to this general rule was the activities of the Column of Cork and Tipperary and the anti-treaty IRA fighters led by Tom Barry in late December 1922. Now, this group of around 100 men took a string of towns, first in Cork, then in Tipperary, and finally Carrick-on-Suir and Thomastown and Mullinavat in Kilkenny, where the Free State troops surrendered and gave up their arms. However, even Barry's forces were not capable of holding any of the places it had taken by January 1923, and it dispersed due to the lack of food supplies. Now, despite the successes of the National Army, it took about 8 months of intermittent warfare before the war was brought to an end, and the guerrilla phase of the war was marked by assassinations and executions of leaders formerly allied with the cause of the Irish independence. Commander-in-Chief Michael Collins was killed in an ambush by anti-treaty Republicans at Beal-Mablaith near his home in County Cork in August 1922. And Collins' death increased the bitterness of the Free State leadership towards the Republicans and contributed to the subsequent descent of the conflict into a cycle of atrocities and reprisals. Arthur Griffith, the Free State president, had also died of a brain hemorrhage 10 days later, leaving the Free State government in the hands of W.T. Cosgrove and the Free State Army under the command of General Richard Macaulay. Now, by late 1922 and early 1923, the anti-treaty guerrillas campaign had been reduced largely to the acts of sabotage and destruction by the public infrastructure, such as roads, railways. In January 1923, the Great Southern and Western Railway released a report detailing the damage anti-treaty forces had caused their property over the previous 6 months. 375 miles of line damage, 42 engines derailed and 41 bridges and 207 underbridges destroyed. Now, 83 signal cabinets and 13 other buildings were also destroyed in the same month, and Republicans destroyed the railway at Sligo and Ballyboon. Now, it was also in this period that the anti-treaty IRA began burning the homes of Free State senators of many of the Anglo-Irish landed class. So the end of the war. Now, by early 1923, the offensive capability of the IRA had been seriously eroded, and when in February 1923, Republican leader Liam Deasy was captured by the Free State forces, he called on Republicans to end their campaign and reach the accommodation within the Free State. The state's execution of the anti-treaty prisoners, 34 of whom were shot in January 1923, also took its toll on the Republicans' morale. Now, in addition to the National Army's operation in the field, were slowly but steadily breaking up the remaining of the Republicans' concentrations. On the 18th of February, anti-treaty officer Denny Lacey was killed and his column were rounded up at the Glen Allo in Tipperary. Now, Lacey had been the head of the IRA's 2nd Southern Division, and his death crippled the Republicans' cause in the Tipperary-Waterford area. A meeting of the anti-treaty leaders on the 26th of February was told by their 1st Southern Division that in a short time we would not have men left owing to the great number of the arrests and casualties. Now, the Cork units reported that they had suffered 29 killed and an unknown number captured in recent actions, and if 5 men are arrested in each area. Now, March and April 1923 saw this progressive dismemberment of the Republican forces continue with the capture and sometimes killing of guerrilla columns. Among them were the known of these. Among them were well known of these incidents was the wiping out of the anti-treaty IRA column under Tim Lyons, known as the Aeroplane, in a cave near the Kerry Head on the 18th of April. Now, 3 anti-treaty IRA men and 2 National Army soldiers were killed in the siege of the cave, and the remaining 5 Republicans were taken prisoner and later executed. Now, a National Army report on the 11th of April stated the events of the last few days point to the beginning and the end as far as the irregular campaign is concerned. Now, as the conflict petered out into a de facto victory for the pro-treaty side, de Valera asked the IRA leadership to call ceasefire, but they refused, and the anti-treaty IRA executive met on the 26th of March in County Tipperary to discuss the war's future. So Tom Barry proposed a motion to end the war, but it was defeated by 6 votes to 5, and Eamon de Valera was allowed to attend after some debate, but was given no voting rights. Okay, now Liam Lynch, who was the intransigent Republican leader, was killed in a skirmish in the Knockall Mountains in County Tipperary on the 10th of April. And the National Army had extracted information from the Republican prisoners in Dublin that the IRA executive was in the area, as well as killing Lynch. They also captured the anti-treaty IRA officers Dan Breen, Todd Andrews and Sean Gaynor and Frank Barrett in this operation. Now, it is often suggested that the death of Lynch allowed the more pragmatic Frank Aiken to take over the IRA Chief of Staff to call a halt to what seemed to be a futile struggle. And Aiken's accession to the IRA leadership was followed on the 30th of April by the declaration of a ceasefire on behalf of the anti-treaty forces. Now, on the 24th of May 1923, Aiken followed with an order to IRA volunteers to dump arms rather than surrender them or continue the fight where they were incapable of winning. Okay. So I just want to obviously take that time there. We've got, obviously there was a lot of information there. So forgive me, but we've kind of got to where we are in regards to the war. So I just really want to just quickly go through some of the characters. I am conscious of time and I am conscious of trying to keep your attention. Okay, so I'm going to now show this gentleman. Okay, Michael Collins. So Michael Collins, okay, stop screen, present, share screen, share. Okay, so Michael Collins, okay. Michael Collins, his background, he worked as a clerk in London from 1906 and he returned to Ireland in 1916. And he fought in the Easter Rising and he was arrested and held in detention at Frongoch and Meredith, but was released in December 1916. Now, in December 1918, he was one of 27 out of the 73 elected Sinn Féin members present when Dáil Éireann, the Irish Assembly, convened in Dublin and declared for the Republic. Now, their elected president, Eamon de Valera, the vice president, Arthur Griffith, were both in prison. Hence, much responsibility fell on Collins, who became the first Dáil's Minister of Home Affairs after arranging for de Valera's escape from the Lincoln jail in February 1999. Now, it was a Director of Intelligence of the Irish Republic Army, the IRA, however, that he became famous as a chief planner and coordinator of the revolutionary movement. Collins organised numerous attacks on police and the assassination in November 1920 of many of the British leading intelligence agents in Ireland. Now, he headed a list of men wanted by the British who had placed a price of £10,000 on his head. So that was quite a high bounty in that time. Now, after the truce in July 1921, Griffith and Collins were sent to London by de Valera, the principal negotiations for peace. Now, the Treaty of December 6, 1921 was signed by Collins. in belief that it was for the best and that could be obtained for Ireland, and at the time, and in the full awareness that he might be signing his own death warrant. Now, it gave Ireland Dominion status, but its provision for the oath of allegiance to the British Crown was unacceptable to De Valera and other Republican leaders. Collins' persuasiveness helped win the acceptance for the treaty by a small majority in Dáil and a provisional government that was formed under his chairmanship. But effective administration was obstructed by mutinous activities of the anti-treaty Republicans, and Collins refrained from taking action against his former comrades until the IRA surgeons seized the forecourts in Dublin and the Civil War became inevitable. Now, I touched on the forecourts. Okay. Now, William Thomas Cosgrove replaced Collins as chairman when the latter assumed command of the army in mid-July 1922 in order to crush the insurgency. Now, the assassination of Michael Collins, once I've covered the characters, I am going to touch off because there was a bit of a love story involving Michael Collins, and I've put together something as well that I'd like to share with you all. Now, the murder of the public figure turned. So, as I mentioned, Michael Collins was executed. He was ambushed. Now, another gentleman that I also mentioned was that of Liam Lynch. So I'm going to share Liam as well. Okay. Okay. His full name being William Flanagan Lynch. So I'm just going to pause at the moment and just take this opportunity just to check on the chat to see that you're still there with me. Okay. Excellent. That's right, Paul. 10K has got to be well into six figures now. You're right there. Hello, Suzanne. Thank you for joining us. So, yeah. So, Liam Lynch. He was basically, he was from a town called Barnagora, which was by Limerick, near Mitchelstown Town, Cork. Okay. So in 1910, at the age of 17, he started an apprenticeship in O'Neill's hardware trade in Mitchelstown, where he joined the Gaelic League and the Ancient Order of Hibernians. And later he worked at Barry's Timber Merchants in Fermanagh. Now, in the aftermath of the 1960 Easter Rising, he witnessed the shooting and arrest of David and Richard Kent of Bornod House by the Royal Irish Constabulary. Now, in the war of it, I won't go into because I'm conscious of time, the War of Independence, but I'm going to mention his role more so in the treaty. Now, Lynch was opposed to the Anglo-Irish Treaty, and on the grounds that it de-established the Irish Republic and proclaimed in 1916 in favour of Dominion states for Ireland within the British Empire. Now, he became Chief of Staff in March 1922 of the IRA, much of which was also against the treaty, and Lynch, however, did not want to split the Republican movement and hoped to reach compromise with those who supported the treaty. But by the publication of the Republic Constitution for the new Free Irish State, the British would not accept this, as the treaty had only just been signed and ratified, leading to a bitter split in the Irish ranks and ultimately the Civil War. Now, in the Civil War, although Lynch opposed the siege of the Four Courts in Dublin by the group of hardline Republicans, he joined its garrison in June 1922 when it was attacked by the newly formed Free State Irish Army. This marked the beginning of the Irish Civil War, and Lynch was arrested by the Free State forces but was allowed to leave Dublin. Now, on the understanding that he would try and halt the fighting, instead he quickly began organising resistance elsewhere. Now, with the capture of Joe McKelvey at the Four Courts, Liam Lynch resumed the position of Chief of Staff of the anti-treaty Irish Republican Army forces, also called the Irregulars, which McKelvey had temporarily taken over. Lynch, who was most familiar with the South, planned to establish a Munster Republic, which he believed would frustrate the creation of the Free State. Now, the Munster Republic would be defended by the Limerick-Waterford line, and this consisted of moving from the east to the west of the city of Waterford, and the towns of Carrick-on-Suir, Clonmel, Fethard and Cashel, Golden and Tipperary, ending in the city of Limerick, where Lynch established his headquarters. Now, in July, he led its defence. It fell to the Free State troops on the 20th of July, 1922. Now, Lynch retreated further south to set up his new headquarters at Fernmoy, the Munster Republic, and it fell in August 1922 when the Free State troops landed by the Sea of Cork and Kerry. Now, Cork City was taken on the 8th of August, and Lynch abandoned Fernmoy the next day, and the anti-treaty forces were dispersed and pursued guerrilla tactics. In the process of this assault, his opponent Michael Collins was killed on the 22nd of August, as I've touched on before. All right. Lynch contributed to the growing bitterness of the war by issuing that there were known as the Orders of Frightfulness against the provisional government on the 30th of November 1922. Now, the General Order sanctioned the killing of the Free State TDs. These are members of Parliament and senators, as well as certain judges, newspaper editors, in reprisal for the Free State's killing of captured Republicans. Now, the first Republican prisoner to be executed were 4 IRA men captured with arms in the 14th of November 1922, and followed by the execution of the Republican leader Erskine Childers on November 17th. Lynch then issued his orders, which were acted upon by IRA men who killed TD Sean Howes and wounded another TD outside Doyle. In reprisal, the Free State immediately shot 4 Republican leaders: Rory O'Connor, Liam Mellows, Dick Barrett, and John McKelvey. This led to a cycle of atrocities on both sides, including the Free State official execution of 77 Republican prisoners and unofficial killing of roughly 150 other captured Republicans. Now, Lynch's men, for their part, launched a concerted campaign against the homes of the Free State members of Parliament, and among the acts they carried out were burning of houses of TD James McGarry, resulting in the death of his 7-year-old son, and the murder of Free State Minister Kevin O'Higgins, his elderly father, and burning of his home at Stradbally in 1923. Just for a little bit of useless information, Stradbally is where my family are from. Now, Lynch was heavily criticised by some Republicans, notably Ernie O'Malley, for his failure to coordinate their war effort and for letting the conflict peer into an inconclusive guerrilla warfare. Now, Lynch made unsuccessful efforts to import mountain artillery from Germany in order to turn the tide of the war, and in March 1923, the anti-treaty IRA Army executive met in the remote location in Nile Valley. Now, several members of the executive proposed ending the Civil War, but Lynch opposed them because Lynch narrowly carried a vote to continue the war. Now, on the 10th of April 1923, Free State soldiers were seen approaching the mountain, and Liam was carrying important papers that he knew must not fall into the enemy's hands. So he and his 6 comrades retreated up the Knocklemead Down mountains. They ran into a column of 50 Free State soldiers approaching from the opposite side. Lynch was hit by a rifle fire from the road at the foot of their hill. Knowing the value of the papers they carried, he ordered his men to leave him behind. When the enemy finally came across Lynch, they initially believed him to be Eamon de Valera, but he reportedly informed them, "I am Liam Lynch, Chief of Staff of the Irish Republican Army. Get me a priest and a doctor. I'm dying." He was carried on an improvised stretcher manufactured from guns to Nugent's pub in Newcastle. So for those in the audience, a pub in the UK and Ireland, it's a bar. We call it a public house. Now, This was in Newcastle, and on the foot of the mountain. Sorry, he was later brought to the hospital in Clonmel and died that evening at 8 p.m. Okay, so I won't want to cover there. That was Liam Lynch. Okay, so another character. Because I know that we're conscious of time. Okay. Right. What I'm going to do now is that I want to talk about Michael Collins and Kitty Keenan. Okay, so basically, Catherine Bridget Keenan, beg your pardon. So she was born on the 26th of January in 1892. Okay, and she was from County Longford. She had a relationship with Michael Collins, and obviously, as we mentioned, Michael was one of the principal founders of the independent Irish state, and was introduced to basic vivacious Keenan, sister by his cousin Gerald O'Sullivan, who was already dating Maud Keenan. Collins initially fell for the captivating Helen Keenan, but she was already engaged to someone else. He then turned his interest to Kitty, who had already captured the interest of Collins's friend, Harry Boland. Okay, so however, it was Collins from whom Kitty became engaged, with plans to marry Collins in November 1922. A double ceremony which included the nuptials of Maud and Gerald. Collins' assassination 4 months earlier, resulted in a single wedding taking place. Okay. So I just want to obviously just talk about the love story there. Okay. I'm going to take this chance to look at the chat. So okay. So as I've just mentioned there about the marriage, it was before the two. It was not long before the two turned their interest towards one another. They did announce their engagement in 1921. A year before Collins was shot. The couple's wedding was planned for October the following year, with hopes to throw a double wedding, as I mentioned, with Maud and Gerard. However, the ongoing civil war, the wedding plans was continuously postponed and rescheduled. But obviously, they never got to marry each other in the end. So I just want to put together this clip and just take this time to have a little time out and go through the chat. So I'm going to stop the screen. I thought the world held not but joy for me, and even though we've drifted far apart, I never dreamed but what I dreamed of thee. I love you as I've never loved before. Hello, Asada. Hello down there. Good to see you all. I hope you can hear the clip clearly. Come to me in my dreams of love alone. I love you as I loved you when you were sweet, when you were sweet, 16.
never loved before. Since first
Hello, Patrick. Thank you for coming.
on the village green, come to me, and my dreams of love grow. I love you as I love you when you were sweet, when you were sweet, 16.
Okay, everyone. I just want to say, I think I'm going to stop it there. It was a lot of information. Okay. I'm just, you know, I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to just use this time now as well, just to go through and have a look and speak to you all in the chat. Okay. Okay, right. I just also as well, just want to look at getting some of you wrenched up. So just bear with me 2 seconds. Okay. Hold on, hold on. Okay. Okay, down there. Let's do that. Suzanne. Okay. Hold on, hold on. Okay, right, everyone. I know there's a lot of information there, but as I say, thank you for coming. You know, I appreciate it. I just want to talk to some of you if you've got some questions that you'd like to ask me. Okay, let's have a look. Okay. Okay. That's all right, Paul. No, I appreciate that. I wanted to do something different. It's a lot of information. It's more something that I just, if you are interested, that you wanted to be able to listen to it, it's something there that would obviously take a lot of sitting there and listening. I wanted to get as much information as I could in, but this was I also use this live as an exercise as well for me. But I know I do appreciate you all coming in and supporting me. So that was good. So what I'm going to do now, right, everyone? I don't think anyone's got any questions. I think I've talked them to sleep. That's right. I did see that. I don't think I've seen the movie, but I did. You're right, down there. I did see like a clip of Julia Roberts, who was that lady. I just I probably it wasn't very romantic. I must admit, I was a bit tongue tied at the end. It wasn't the best execution, but hey, this is my second live on my own channel, so yeah. Okay, so that's good. I'd say Okay, yeah, the movie is Michael Collins. That's right, Paul. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to say thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your support. Also, I'm going to be moving around trying different topics to try and find my niche area. But what I'm going to do now, I think it's only right that we go out on a little bit of music. You'll like this one, Paul. I know you will. Here we go.
Oh, my name is Joe McDonald. From Belfast town I came. That city I
Okay.
will never see.
If you give us one give us a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear the music, please.
I spent many happy days. I love that town in oh so many ways. For there I spent my childhood and found for me a wife. I then set out to make for her a life. But all my young ambitions met with bitterness and hate. I soon found myself inside a prison gate. And you dare to call me a terrorist while you let down your gun. When I think of all the deeds that you have done, you have plundered many nations, divided many lands.
Thank you, down there. Thank you, Paul. Just want to go through everyone again. Andrea, thank you, sir. Andrea Fatali, Roscoe, Primo, Tindu, Marta, Tommy, Edwin. Excellent, Patrick. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Chris Trott. Thank you, Marta. Okay, everyone, peace out.